and with it, our first learning center in the brain. Uh, by the time we're all through, I'll talk to you about five kinds of learning and the parts of the brain that are most responsible for them. Now, hippocampus is in charge of two of those. Let's begin with episodic learning. This is what most people, I think, would think of as learning. Your ability to remember things that happened to you throughout your life. These are also so called autobiographical memories. Episodic learning has a special feature. It has to be able to do one trial learning. I'm going to say it's possible because training and repetition is key. However, a lot of things you remember with just one trial, such as all the things that happened to you. Right? How many breakfasts did you have today? Well, there's zero or one, but let's say if you did have a breakfast, you remember it, but it's a singular event. How many first kisses have you had? One, but you likely remember that. Unless it hasn't happened yet, which hang in there. All right. We learned about this feature of the hippocampus, patient HM. HM, oops, I forgot to label it for you, but it is labeled. It's the hippocampus, medial temporal lobe structure. Note how close it is to the amygdala, and your neighbors matter sometimes. And we'll talk about this. But patient HM had epilepsy, seizure disorder, and the seizures were emanating from the hippocampi. Unfortunately, at the time in the 50s, I think it may have been the 60s, uh, either way, it was believed that the hippocampi were not critical pieces of neuroanatomy. So his surgery team took out both left and right hippocampus. Poor HM became like a 30-second man since he could no longer record things that happened to him. It was like he was frozen in time. He couldn't update based on changing events in his life. He had anterograde amnesia, which means going forward. It's a little strange, but if the day of the surgery was here, this is the future, time goes this way, this is the past. HM had anterograde amnesia, so future memories are gone. Interestingly, he also lost a short amount of memories, like 3 to 6 months prior to the surgery. And this gives us a very interesting clue as to what the hippocampus is doing. See, these intermediate term memories must live in the hippocampus because when you remove them, the memories are gone. Now, it could also be that they're so fresh that what you might lose is a sort of a map, like a treasure map, if you will, assuming that memories are distributed in some way. You could imagine how you would need a map that would tell you where the pieces are. And it could be that taking out the hippocampus disrupted the map. But I do believe that the memories are still housed in the hippocampus for 3 to 6 months. Older memories, you see, HM was fine. Those were untouched. So it seems like the hippocampus processes the memories and in roughly 3 to 6 months either transfers that memory, presumably to the cortex, and then the memory becomes independent of the hippocampus. There have been a couple of movies made of this. The only one worth your time is Memento, which it gets ridiculous as many movies get, but it at least describes and demonstrates the condition pretty darn well. I think is it Memento? And then there's that other one, 51st Dates. I haven't seen this, so I can't vouch if it's an accurate depiction of the syndrome or not. But maybe it is. Okay. The other kind of learning that the hippocampus is intimately involved with is spatial navigation and spatial learning. Now, how does it do this? Well, through three kinds of cells. Cells that are responsive when the animal is in a particular spot in its cage. Grid cells respond if you're in one of a number of positions in this same space. These boundary, vector, or edge cells, look at what they're responding to: edges and boundaries, or the limits of the environment. And through the use of these kinds of cells, and these cells are all in the hippocampal area, the animal has a map of the spatial layout of their environment. A real oldie but a classic study is the London cabbies. Apparently, being a cab driver in London is no easy feat. And like I said, an early brain imaging study said, hey, let's go look at the hippocampi of these individuals. And if you pursue the study, you'll see that they actually compare bus drivers to cab drivers, because there are interesting controls in there. If you think about it, bus drivers tend to do the same route, whereas cabbies have to be much more creative about their routing. Well, one thing they found is that at least in the posterior of the hippocampus, they found an enlargement, and they found a nice correlation such that the years of experience were correlated with a higher gray matter volume. Of limited interest to us, but there might be a cost. And what they found is that there was the opposite relationship in the anterior hippocampus. And they theorized in this study that it may be that their spatial navigation, which is apparently more related to posterior hippocampal, might come at a cost of spatial memories, which apparently is more the work of the anterior hippocampus. Interesting study. I'll try to remember to post it on the course website.